of a marketing rep out in the field, canvasser. And so he has a really good understanding of what we all do. And then at any point, he'll probably ask questions and dive into some topics that maybe spend a little bit more time on some than others. But we also had 10 to 12 to 14 different topics we could get into. We don't have 2 days to do it, so we broke it down, and that's where the sales managers gave us some good input on what should we really focus on, as well as marketing. So we think we have a great day planned for you. I know we have a great day planned for you. And as always, you get in, you get out of these things, what you put into it. I know Owen told me this was one of the better groups he's been with. He could see the engagement, the excitement, the culture. He was excited to speak to you. So let's make sure that we give Owen all of our attention and respect that we always do for a guest. And let him take us on that journey and let's learn something today. So, Owen.
Thank you very much, everyone. How are we all doing today? We good?
Yeah.
Excellent, wonderful. Now, there's a few things that I'd ask you right from the start. We've got a lot of stuff to go through, right? We're going to be doing a lot. I will ask anyone whose seat, just because of the way of the room, anyone whose seat is actually facing away from me, and you have to turn an angle, mainly because I want to make sure you look after your, back and neck and stuff. If you can turn the seat around so that you're facing up towards the stage, towards the slides, that I can see. And the reason, again, one is, about your own health. The other is obviously I'm selfish and I want to see on your faces as well, right? To those of you who haven't seen me before, I just want to apologize, just because I think I usually start out with an apology. If people haven't seen me before, just in case I come across a little bit different or weird or strange or something. I'm originally from, most of you know, from Dublin in Ireland, but I have been living in New York for the last 3.5 years. So if you hear a bit of a weird accent, that would be New York. So we're going to be talking today about something which I hope and I believe is going to be extremely useful and extremely valuable for you. This is something, as Scott mentioned, that I had a lot of talks with a lot of the sales managers and Scott and Linda and Joe. And we're going to be looking at, I call it the mental game, but we're going to start by talking about some of the mental ideas, and then we're going to go into the communication aspect. We're going to talk about what we call emotional intelligence. Now, one thing I'm sure of is a number of the things that I'm going to cover today is going to be stuff that you already know, stuff that you already do. And if it's stuff that you already know and stuff that you already do, then all I want you to be focused on is, how do I make sure that this reminder helps me do it consistently? Because if you do it consistently, that's where the results will come. And if I was to say the one theme for today, it's not about insights or inspiration. I'm hoping at some point you get a number of insights. I'm hoping at some point you get inspired. But my most important thing for you is to make sure that you're building habits, routines and habits of things that you can do that maybe you weren't doing to date, but will allow you to set yourself up for success. And if you know, the most successful salespeople have habits. The most successful people in marketing have habits, things that they do consistently that get the results. It's no good having a great sale and doing a great job and then feeling good about it and then struggling for the next while, for the next few weeks. What's imperative is that you're able to make it so that the process doesn't change regardless of whether or not you get a sale or you don't. You're always consistent. And that word consistency is something I want you to have in the back of your mind. As such, I'm going to talk about action plans or action guides I'm going to ask you to create. So by the end of this is going to be a bit different to most of the workshops or trainings you might have had before, because I'm actually going to be asking not just during the exercises to interact with each other, but I'm also going to be asking you to jot down specific actions you're going to commit to taking. And you're going to do for each exercise a number of those. So by the end of this training today, you will have from each of the exercises specific actions that you can then put. What I'd recommend is you put it in one document. And it can either be one handwritten page if you're more like you prefer the old school approach, or you can print it out on a one sheet. But what that does is it gives you a reminder. And just like you have to remind yourself, maybe sometimes, some of you don't because you've been doing this for so long, but you might have to remind yourself about the 10-step process. Well, that reminder helps you to make sure you're not missing anything. And so for you, I want this also to be something else to remind yourself of. And so consistency and habits is what we're looking for today. And what I'm hoping is that you'll not only learn from me, but you'll learn from each other as well. So to start off with, just a really quick background bio of me. I don't like talking about myself very much. I've traveled quite a lot. I've been a psychologist for, the last 25 years or so, and I specialize mainly in the area of influence and persuasion and on the focus of belief. So I talk about how to cultivate belief in an idea, how to cultivate belief in a product, how to cultivate belief in a leadership team, how to cultivate belief in yourself. And so that's the main area of specialty that I focus on. I've written a bunch of books and done a bunch of things, but what's most important here is that in the work that you're going to be doing, it's about finding a way of ensuring that you bring your performance and your mental health up to as high as it could possibly be. Some of you are going to be finding yourself struggling with certain things in life. Others, everything is going, grand at the moment. But regardless of what area you find yourself in, what's most important is that you're taking care of your mind the same way we need to take care of our body. And so this is what we're going to be doing over the course of the entire day. Even though we did limit it down to a number of different topics, we still got a lot to go through. So I want to say first and foremost, we will be covering a lot of material. I do want to make it as interactive as possible. So I will be asking you general questions, closed questions that I'm hoping that you could say yes to, or, nod your heads at the very least. But I obviously with a bigger audience, I prefer to get like yeses because it creates more energy. And then sometimes I'll actually ask you to, share your thoughts or opinions. Because the one thing I know is me reading through the sales manual, which was fun. It did help me get asleep. But there's some really great stuff in there. And this sales manual was made many years ago, but the psychology behind it is on point. And so one of the things I always do, mainly because I'm a nerd, is I'll look through it and I'll go, oh, this is this principle, this is that principle, this is why they did this is why they did that. And I went through the entire script and started to go through and notice each one of those things. But the one thing I'll say is, only you know what it's like to be doing what you do. So I'm not going to pretend to understand to the same extent as you, the same challenges you have. But what I will do is offer you what I know, what I do all the time, which is to help you to be able to get in control over the way you think about whatever situation is in, because that will determine quite a lot of how you perform in that situation. And then how do you make sure that you optimize or maximize your communication? You know the steps to go through, but what can you do to lift it up a little bit more? And what can you do to make sure that your performance, as I said, is more consistent? Is this all making sense so far?
Yep.
Yes. Now we've got a lot of time together and we've got a lot of stuff to go through. So I'm going to get straight into it. And so what we're going to be starting to talk about is mindset and attitude. I'll talk about the difference between the two. It's a subtle difference, but it's also important. We'll talk about the attitudes of success. I'm just going to focus on 3. I'll talk about the mindsets of success. I'm just going to focus on 3. And the reason I'm only focusing on 3 is because they're the 3 that are most important for you in the work that you do, based on, again, the conversations I've had and the study that I've done in terms of your process. We're then going to get into what we call emotional intelligence, or EQ. Has anyone heard of emotional intelligence before? Okay, so a good few of you. So emotional intelligence is pretty much broken into 4 sections. Your awareness of yourself, that's your own mindset, that's your own behaviors, that's your own personality, that's how you come across to others. Your management of yourself, your ability to control your own emotions, your ability to stop yourself from punching the person in the face that you want to punch in the face. Has anyone ever done that before? Not punch, but stopped yourself from saying something you didn't mean. Anyone ever done that? All right, so that's self-management. Then we're going to talk about social awareness. Social awareness is your ability to pay attention to what's going on around you. And part of that is reading the person. So when you go to a home and you're spending time with the person and you're chatting with the person, you're reading them, you're noticing, you're picking up little body language, facial expressions, you're understanding their personality, you're listening to the words they use. And by the way, a lot of this you're doing, when you're doing well, you're doing this unconsciously. What I want you to be able to do is do it consciously, so then you can be even better at it. Right? So a lot of the stuff I talk about, some of it will be stuff that you know that you do, some of the stuff is you didn't know that you did it, but you do it. And then some stuff you don't know that you don't know. And so I want to help you with the stuff that you don't know that you're doing, as well as the stuff that you don't know that you're not doing, so that you can do it. So I think, I think it does. I think it does. So the key here is that we're going to be looking at social awareness, noticing people, reading people, and then we'll go into relationship management. And this is really about cultivating relationships. What does that? right? How do we build trust? How do we build likability? What are the essence or elements of building good, solid relationships with people? And then we're going to go into basics in terms of enhancing communication. And then we finish off with one of the things that I'm very passionate about, which is the power of effective storytelling. We're going to be looking at how to tell stories effectively. You tell a number of stories in the work that you do, but I'm going to break down different types that you use. And then we'll walk into how you can structure stories to optimize how effective you are. So overall, does that look like a fun day?
Yep.
Excellent, great stuff. So first of all, a quick recap. All of you are obviously aware. I know it's been iterated over time, but generally speaking, you have your 10 steps. You have, the way in which you deal with objections. The only reason I put this here is because this is a given. This is what I know that you already know and that you already do. And what I want to make sure is that as we go through this, as you go through the session today, I'm hoping that you pick up and realize why those elements are working the way they are. And also how to optimize the way that you deliver each one of those areas. So whereas this is the sort of the macro set of steps that you're going to be walking through in the work that you do, what I'm interested in is that how do you make sure that you optimize along the way? How do you make sure that you master the ability to do this? And so again, there is actually good explanations in the manuals and stuff about why you, for example, silence and letting them get it out of their system and what. There's lots of good stuff there. What I want to do is expand on it and help you to be able to make sure that as you go through this process, as you overcome objections, as you go to close, as you do the pre-close, as you do the demo, in every part of the experience that you work with them, you're understanding how they're feeling and you're guiding them all the way through the journey. Now, one of the things we talked about as well is the fact that a large part of the work that you do would be about creating emotions, creating excitement in your customers. Would that be fair?
Yes.
And so when you're creating emotions, then towards the end, there's a cooling off where you start to go into the logic. Now, emotion and logic are both critical. And so we will be diving into a little bit more about how to ensure that you're even more effective at managing the emotional state of the client or customer. Would that work well?
Yes.
Excellent, perfect. All right. So the other thing I wanted to mention beforehand is action guides. So along the way, I kind of touched on it, alluded to it in a moment. You have notebooks there, or you might have your own notebooks. Either one works. But here's what I'm going to be asking you to do. Whenever we do an exercise, I'm going to ask you to make sure that at the end of that exercise, I'll say, okay, action guides. I'll give you 2 minutes. And for those 2 minutes, I just want you to jot down 3 or 4 bullets on what you're going to do, 3 or 4 actions. And it should be framed in the form of an action. So it shouldn't be, think about this, or it shouldn't be, become more, confident. It should be specific actions that you can tell if you're doing it, something you can measure. And the reason I want you to do that is because when we, again, at the very, very end of the entire process, when you have 3 or 4 for each of the exercises, you're going to have about 20, 24 or so different actions that you can take. And then you can organize them. And it means when you walk away tomorrow, it's not just, oh, that was kind of interesting yesterday, but it's, I've got an action plan now. I've got an action plan that I can execute on a consistent basis to make sure I get the kind of results. Okay. Those of you who haven't heard me before, is my accent okay? You understanding it? There's not. Sometimes I say there's one word that I might say that might throw you off. It's but. I say but, and a lot of times I have to explain what I mean by that because people don't hear it. So sometimes I put it in a slightly American accent. I say but, and it sounds more South than anything else. But when I say that, people hear it. So I'll try to notice it. It'll be easier if I say but and you understand that I mean but. Is that okay? All right. Normally I have a translator when I go to foreign countries. Sometimes I think I need one when I'm speaking in English. But sure, look. All right. So as I said, the final part will be 2 or 3 bullets of specific actions that you're going to take. By the end of it, you'll have the collection of actions, as I mentioned. That's the story. So let's start by talking about mindset and attitude. And before we get to attitude or mindset, we want to be able to look at how they relate to adversity. And so first of all, the difference between mindset and attitude. The mindset is a core belief about something that determines how we think and act about it. I'll give you some examples of that in a minute, but let me just explain attitude first. It's a feeling or an opinion about something. You don't like this, you do like that. You've got a good attitude, you've got a bad attitude. You've got an enthusiastic attitude, You've got to have bored attitude. An attitude is more about your feeling, whereas your mindset has an element of feeling, but it's more cognitive, it's more conscious. It's more about the way in which you look at a certain situation. And we need to make that nuance because oftentimes we use these synonymously. But when we do, we fail to see the importance of making sure you feel a certain way and making sure you think a certain way. And so just to start off with, in terms of mindsets, there's some fascinating research out there that looked at people's mindset and showed the impact of adjusting one. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, they did a study of hotel and house cleaners. And what they did was they went to the hotel and house cleaners and they tried to measure, how much exercise are you getting? And so, most of them weren't getting that much exercise. They measured their biomarkers. They measured everything from their glucose to their blood pressure to their, body mass index, all this sort of stuff. And what they did was, for 50% of the hotel cleaners, they sat them down and they explained to them when they cleaned rooms, how many calories they burned, how much exercise they got. That's all they did. They spent about half an hour, 40 minutes with this group, teaching them how, in fact, they were actually getting a lot of exercise. With the other 50%, they didn't. 3 months later, they went back to measure the biomarkers, and the group that had been told about how much exercise they were getting had significantly better improvements as opposed to the other group who hadn't been given that information. There was no difference in terms of they weren't exercising more, but the biomarkers were all so much better than they had been 3 months before. Why is that? It's because their mindset changed about the work they were doing. Let me give you another one. There's a chemical in our body called ghrelin. Ghrelin is something that is responsible, or largely responsible for making us hungry. Whenever ghrelin increases, we're more hungry. And so once again, the researchers wanted to see, can you change something biological as a result of your mindset? And so what they did was they gave some people a milkshake. And they said, look, or a smoothie. And they said, look, this is a very light smoothie. It's very low calories. It's this, it's that, it's the other. They gave them the smoothie. They took it. And they measured levels of ghrelin before and afterwards. And they found that when the people took the low-fat, slim smoothie, their levels of ghrelin dipped only a little bit. Now, a week later, they brought the same people in and said, okay, we did gave you the low-fat, the slim, healthy shake last time. This time, we're going to give you the proper one. We're going to give you the really healthy one, the really fat, full of, lots of nutrients, a really heavy one. And they gave them the heavy smoothie. And they took it and their ghrelin shut down. In other words, they weren't hungry for a good while afterwards. What was the catch? It was the exact same drink. Their mindset about it changed the level of this chemical that determined whether or not they were healthy. And the reason I bring these two examples up is I want you to realize mindset isn't just about being positive about stuff or having a good mindset means you're thinking positively. Mindset actually affects our entire body. It affects our neurochemistry. It affects our biochemistry. And so understanding how to be able to shift our mindset doesn't just play a part in determining, our attitude for that day or our way of feeling that day. It also has real impacts upon our life. Is that making sense so far?
Yes.
So then we have attitude, the feeling that we have about something, we all know how that goes. If you go in to a meeting with someone and you've got the wrong kind of attitude, you're done for. But in order for us to be able to deal with mindset and attitude, and again, as I give you the 3 shifts for each, I first want to talk about adversity. I want to talk about some of the things that challenge us on an ongoing basis. So we all have these kind of things. So for example, you've got challenges that you might face in the company. We've got adversity like you have a bad call, you get rejected. You've got a bad month overall coming up. You've got stress. You've got overwhelmed. You've got exhaustion. Has anyone ever experienced any of those in their life? All right. So we are all familiar with it. So the real question is, what do we do when we're experiencing those? And that's what the shifts that we need to make will help. If we can shift our mindset and shift our attitude, it won't always solve the problem fully, but it'll significantly reduce the impact of it. And we're going to talk about how to do that and why it works. So these are some of the challenges that, obviously I'm aware you're facing, and they're not the only ones. Because we also have outside the company as well, in our personal lives. And again, you know, it's like you never know what another person's going through. We go online and we go, you know, on Instagram or whatever, and you see people where they seem to be always happy. Anyone ever notice that? People are always on holiday. That's the first thing. They're always on vacation. They're always like in the sun somewhere. Even during COVID, the amount of time I was looking, you know, at all these people going, where are they? Right? I'm at, you know, everyone I know is in a house, but all of these people seem to be enjoying themselves happy. And so when you look at the world through that lens, it's easy to think everybody else is killing it except for me. And the truth of the matter is, everyone else is putting on a particular facade on this particular social media channel, except for you. And maybe even you're doing it as well. But the point of it is, it's really important to understand that we all struggle through these in life. We have challenges with our family. We've got ill health. We've got grief, which is, you know, the worst. We've got money worries or stress or relationship challenges and mental health challenges. These are the things that we all face. And some people face it in more degrees than others. It's just the way it works. But in recognizing that, by the way, I know this is a bit of a downer, so everything else from now on is going to be an over. Okay, so we're getting this out of the way so that the rest of the time we could be, you know, all good. But I wanted to bring this up because I don't want it to look at, oh, everyone, the world is great, the world is wonderful, everything's perfect, everything's fine, and have these mindsets and attitudes. No, that's not what this is about. The real world is like this as well. It has amazing things. There's wonderful events. We could equally have the best things that happen in the company, and the best things that happen outside. But in reality, we do face adversity. And we have to recognize that first, because when you recognize it, you get real. And when you get real, then you're not running away from anything. You're not putting your head in the sand. You're saying, okay, it is what it is. Then what can I do about it? And what you can do about it is work on the way in which you interpret it, the way in which you think about it. You cannot control the world. You can control the way you think about the world. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Excellent. So let's get into the attitudes of success. Again, an attitude being the way you feel about certain things. And there's three things that I'm going to talk about. Okay, we lost battery on that. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to speak and then we'll get this for whatever the next break. My voices should be loud enough anyway. If anyone can't hear me, just let me know, okay? All right?
Yeah.
No, that's the thing. All right. So first and foremost, we're going to be starting to look at gratitude. So we're going to talk about gratitude as being an attitude. It's just convenient that they rhyme because gratitude is one of the single most important things in the research that was done from I suppose, psychological level on levels of happiness. Thank God. What they found was that the number one thing that made a difference to people's overall levels of happiness and resilience was gratitude. We'll talk about what that means because a lot of times we go, oh yeah, to be grateful, that's fine. Yeah. No, I am grateful, yeah. Which is not gratitude. Saying yeah is not anything. What it is it's a misunderstanding of the actual practice. Because if we don't practice it, we don't do it. If we don't do it, we don't get the benefits from it. So simply say, I'm grateful, means nothing if you're not practicing it. The second thing will be resilience, your ability to bounce back after adversity. And the third thing will be positivity. So let's break these down. The first one is gratitude. So it's gratitude for your life, first of all. How lucky you are to be alive. How lucky you are to have the family you have. How lucky you are to have the friends that you have. How lucky you are to have the cat that you have, the dog that you have, the house that you have, the home that you have, the health that you have. How lucky you are to have whatever it is that's good in your life. Then we've got your job. How lucky you are to be working in a company like this. How lucky you are to be making the money you're making. How lucky you are to have the opportunities that you have. There's a lot to be, in life, there's a lot of things to feel bad about, but it's about feeling grateful and feeling gratitude for all the things that you do have as opposed to what you don't. And it's about your ability to be positive about that. Thank you. So what we want is we want to make sure that as we look at our lives, as we look at our jobs, we're taking time to feel that gratitude, because when you feel gratitude, it's abundance. You get the sense of abundance where you feel like you have enough. Therefore, you also feel you are enough. But the third thing is really important as well. Feeling gratitude for yourself. Because oftentimes you get a bad call, you have a bad conversation, you don't get the sale, it can be easy to beat yourself up. Now, beating yourself up acts as a motivator that makes you even better, great. But if beating yourself up makes you feel lesser than you are, then that's a problem. Because then you find yourself in a cycle and then your confidence is not. And so what's imperative is that you are also feeling grateful about you, being grateful about your strengths, being grateful of all the reasons why you're as great as you are, feeling grateful for your personality, feeling grateful for your talents. Because again, if I look at my life, I can think of 90% of things in my life that I'm terrible at, right? I'm very clumsy. I walk into stuff all the time. Sometimes I don't even notice stuff. There's a lot I'm terrible at, but there's things that I'm very good at. And I choose to spend most of my time thinking about all the things that I feel lucky to be. And as a result of that, that makes me not only more confident, but more able to deal with challenges when I face them. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can everyone hear? Oh, perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to put this on while I talk, so don't mind me. With regards to resilience, whenever we are becoming more resilient, what that really means is it means being able to find ways to bounce back from adversity. And the reason I call resilience largely an attitude is because in order for us to be able to bounce back, it's important that we have a feeling that says whenever adversity strikes, that immediately puts us in a different direction. See, when adversity strikes, it can hit us to the point where we get worse, or it can hit us to the point where we get better. And I'll give you a simple and scientific example of this. Has anyone here heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? It's a real thing. Has anyone here heard of post-traumatic growth? Some of you have. A lot more people have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder. Oh, we'll turn it off first. That would not be nice for anybody. Post-traumatic stress disorder is something most of us have heard of, right? And it comes from the idea that when you go through traumatic experiences, that can result in negatively impacting your mental health down the line. You can be literally traumatized into the point where you've got a lot of issues as a result of that. And so what happens is with post-traumatic stress is that in order to be able to deal with it, we then go to therapy, we go, some people with medication, whatnot, but we're trying to deal with the fact that we're struggling as a result of the adversity. But what researchers have found is that there is also a different direction that people can go in. And some people go in this naturally, and some people need to learn to do it. But it's called post-traumatic growth. What it basically means is that when something bad happens, when you experience a trauma, by experiencing it, it actively makes you stronger or better. And so the real question we have to ask ourselves is, how do you cultivate post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress? How do you turn an event that happens to you, an adversity, a bad experience that you've had, how do you turn that from something that's bad into something that's good? And so in order to help you to do that, here's 3 questions to do. Soon as something is happening, soon as you're going through a tough time, if you can force yourself to ask these questions, it's going to change the direction of your thinking, the direction of your mindset, the direction of every aspect of your neurochemistry. Because what happens is when you ask these questions, your mind has to find an answer. If you want to think more positively, which we'll get to in a moment, you have to ask different questions. You don't say, I'm great, I'm wonderful, everything's going to be fine. Because as soon as you say that, the little voice inside your head, the inner critic goes, no, it's not. What are you talking? Trying to be positive. You go to one seminar and all of a sudden you think you're Pollyanna, right? Calm down. Life is hard. Life is tough. It's easy to say. It's not easy to do. Like, that's the inner voice, the inner critic. So when we're just trying to be positive, it doesn't work. But when you ask questions, your brain needs an answer to the question, right? Just like cliffhangers. We'll talk about stories later. As soon as you see, let's say at the end of a show, we've all seen MacGyver, right? Right? Or 24, anyone seen 24? We're talking about it last night. That's like crack for the mind. You cannot stop watching 24, right? Breaking Bad. There's a lot of great shows out there that at the end of an episode, it hooks you to the next one. Why? Because it poses a question. Will he survive? Will Jack Bauer survive? Will the president die? Our brain wants to know the answer. And so if we want to change our attitude, we do it with questions. And the questions here are, what lessons can I learn? Because every event, who here learned something over COVID? as a result of it. Okay? Right? As a result of that experience, it's not just the lessons, it's also looking for the advantages. What were the advantages of the hard time you went through? What are the advantages of not getting a sale? We can all think of that, right? Can anyone shout out an advantage of not getting a sale?
Go home early.
Go home early, okay? Someone else said something.
You don't have to do paperwork.
You don't have to do paperwork, okay. Now,
Likelihood that the next one's a sale.
say that again.
Likelihood that the next one is a sale.
And so that's the kind of advantages we're looking at. Because if you think about it, you can always say, what's the advantages of not doing exercise? Well, if I don't do exercise, I get to sit on the couch. But we intuitively know that we need to do exercise. And so when we have this thought or idea in our head that says the next one's a sale, immediately it switches around our brain. And so any adversity that happens, we don't have to ignore it. We don't have to cross our fingers and hope it stops. And certainly we don't have to go into this mindset where we start to talk about how it's because of the government, because of the environment, because of the culture, because of bad luck, because of this. Because as soon as we start to look outwardly for the reasons why something doesn't work, we're in trouble. And it doesn't mean we blame ourselves, but there's a difference between blame and responsibility. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But the key is to look at these questions and also what growth does this demonstrate? And growth's a little different to learning because you can learn a lesson, but a really hard experience. Anyone here ever have a really hard experience? You don't have to tell me what it is, but a really hard experience that they grew so much as a result of that. We've all had it, right? That's the key here. And when you realize that the worst things that have happened to you are the things that are actually best for your growth, it doesn't mean that you, oh, I can't wait to have the next trauma happen to me. I'm going to grow. But it does mean that you can reflect on it and go, when you do face the adversity you face in the future, you know everything's going to be okay. And then positivity is the final one. And again, I'm not saying you should always be positive. It's important to be real and realistic and not just live in this world where you assume everything's going to be hunky-dory all the time. The truth is it's not. Things won't always go the way we want them to go. However, if we're optimistic, if we engage in positivity, then we're more likely to make them go the way we want them to go. And so, first of all, with optimism, this is about you thinking about things working out well. It's about you visualizing it. Imagine, Chicago Bears, right? We'll just take an example. Imagine they're going out. If you hate them, it's just an example, right? So if you go, oh no, I don't think they'd be any good. Chicago Bears are going out for a game, and as they go out for a game, imagine this is the team talk they get. Okay, team, listen, we're probably not going to win this. We didn't win last week. I'd be very surprised if we win. It's just, the other team are too good, and we're not good at all. And even if we get a little bit of luck, or even if we start to do it well and we think it's going to work, it's probably not. They're probably going to come back and beat us. So anyway, you ready to go? Now, we laugh at that. We think that would be ridiculous to get a team talk like that. We have to ask ourselves the question, what team talk are we giving to ourselves? Before you go out in the call, what are you saying to yourself? Now, sometimes maybe you're giving yourself a supreme talk. It's like a TED talk in your head that you feel fired up after it. And you go in there and you do a great job. But sometimes, especially if some of the adversity we talked about earlier is happening, it can be very easy not to give yourself a positive talk, but you're always giving yourself some kind of talk. So what is it going to be? Is it going to be, oh, no, what? Or is it going to be something that gets you imagining things working out well? The second is pronoia. And pronoia is the opposite, obviously, to paranoia. Paranoia is everyone else is out to get me. Pronoia is choosing to imagine everybody out there is conspiring to help you in some way. So if someone cuts you off in traffic, they're trying to make you more resilient. If someone gets your name wrong in Starbucks, they're trying to get your attention. Whatever it is, you look at everyone as these are all people and secretly they're trying to help you. Is it true? No, not necessarily, but we don't really know anything. If you say, oh, this person doesn't like me or this person, we don't know this, we can't read minds. But we can choose to believe what we want to believe. And what's interesting is when you choose to believe in more useful ideas, it creates a more useful reality. When you choose to believe in more useful ideas, it creates a more useful reality. And so with that in mind, to have pronoia means to be asking yourself the question, how is this person trying to help me? We're actively looking for it. When you look for it, you'll find it. And then the final one is difference making. Every single time you go there, obviously you're trying to get, let's say, for example, you're trying to get the sale. Or in your marketing, you're trying to get the lead. But every single time you have those conversations, when you think about the difference you can make for them, because at the end of the day, if you talk to them and you're, and you don't believe in what RBA does, you're always going to struggle. You're never going to succeed if you don't believe in what you do. But if you know that you are the best out there, you're the best in the industry, and you provide the best service and the best experience and the best product, when you know that, and you know the difference it can make to your customer, that transforms your communication. That transforms the way in which you interact. That transforms the way in which you feel in the interaction. Is this making sense?
Yes.
So it's really, really vital when we start to do this. Now, I'm asking you to think through these things because in a little bit, I'm going to be asking you to discuss them and to take notes of. So with regards to this, I want you to consider your life, consider your work, consider yourself. I want you to ask yourself what relationships that you have that you really appreciate. I want you to answer the question, what are the benefits of working with RBA? Again, like the business within the business, the fact that all your costs are covered and all your leads are provided to you, which as many of you in the sales profession will know, is relatively unique. And what are your greatest qualities and skills? And so I want you to jot down these, but first I want you to talk to each other about it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you about 6 minutes or so where I want you to converse with the people at the table. And at the end of it, then I'm going to say, okay, action guide. And I'm going to ask you to write down 2 or 3 actions you're going to take as a result of what you just discussed with your team. Right. So again, I'm going to give you about 6 minutes or so just to talk to each other, answering these questions. What relationships do you have that you really appreciate? And these could be relationships in work, outside of work. But you have to share with each other on it. Second of all, what are the benefits of working with RBA? What do you feel gratitude about in terms of your job? Again, you might have stuff that you don't like about relationships that you don't like in your life, things that you don't like about the work. It's always normal. But I'm asking you to spend time focusing on the things that you do, the relationships you love, the things you love about work. And then what are your greatest qualities and skills? Now, this is going to be a hard one, I'm sure. A lot of times we don't like to, toot our own horns. We don't like to tell other people about the qualities or skills we have. And if you've got any friends at the table, I don't know if you're like where I come from. If I'm ever at a table of friends and I'm asked to talk about my strengths or qualities, whatever I say, I'm doomed. They'll immediately say, no, you're not. It doesn't matter what it was. I can breathe. No, you can't. So if you've got friends at the table, I'm going to ask those friends to smile and nod and say, yes. All right. Or if the person's very delusional, maybe you could, no. Not even if they're delusional, no challenging. So is this clear what I'm asking you to do?
Yes.
Right. Just have a conversation with each other, casual conversation, talk to each other. And then I'm going to say action guide. And when I say action guide, you stop talking to each other. So it should be, quiet. And you just jot down 2 or 3 actions that you're going to take. Clear enough?
Yep.
Okay, go for it.
All right. What do you guys think? Needs to get some new friends.
Make it quick. Go for it. Let's start. As soon as I text you.
Two different. I believe it. Yeah, I'd like to speak to the benefits of working for RBA. I think that in general, when you're like, for me anyways, being here for 13 years, knowing the business well, knowing the company well, you sort of go to work every day knowing what to expect, knowing that there's a certain amount of comfort in what you do. And you don't feel like every day could be your last day by choice or not. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, there's a certain amount of comfortability there. I mean, with pay, there's comfortability, and we know that we have the people there that appreciate us. So there's no like, again, there's not the constant like, what's going to happen tomorrow in a negative way. Yeah. That to me, that's the biggest benefit. That's probably what got me through COVID. Was like, I know that my future is here. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, then I probably would have left. You know. What else you guys got?
Like the fact that you can't be perfect here. Like there's always constant growth. It's
Yeah.
one of the things I've been doing jobs and I get bored with it.
It's literally what I was gonna say. Is
Yeah. Yeah, they don't care about education or anything. I mean, you want to get educated on the job at the job. You know what I'm saying?
that steps into relationships, having people in those leadership roles that support you in your growth, even if maybe you're questioning like if you're ready for that type of step. And I know like Paul was definitely a person that was like shut up and more capable than me. So
Yeah, the support is.
that's what I was gonna say in regards to relationships. Like Don, I really appreciate my relationship with Don because he has grown me. I mean, I was 20 when I started, so younger than and he's grown me to mentor him, just by, he doesn't leave with an iron fist, but he gets the job done. So like I don't like yelling at people. It's fun sometimes, like Jake, obviously, but I don't like yelling at people. I don't like being mean to people. So like if I can correct and encourage to grow people, that's what I'm referring to.
And that's what really is like the management style here is like that. It's like, I really want to help you and I really want to help you right. Like your face, which it can be such a good performance.
That means my leadership is really, it's trying to finding a replacement is the biggest thing for me. So, like that's what I want. Someone to take my job. I want to train someone to be able to do my job better. That'd be awesome. Because then you move on and you replicate yourself. So yeah, relationships are what's more is not only the people above us that lead us, but the people we end up leading as well. Gives you such a sense of pride and seeing them grow that you get it from both ends. So it's almost it's a positive feedback. The more that the people above help you grow, the more that you help people. It all just rising tide raises all ships, as they say, right? So
I think it's funny that none of us have mentioned our own greatest qualities
of
or
course we all
skills.
avoided it.
Just
Of
as
course.
I was saying, I went to Chitter at morning, we're all avoiding it like the plague. Well, you
Greatest
start
qualities.
with mouth. Yeah, open your mouth.
Developing successful teams no matter where I am. That's what I feel is a quality of mine. That I can go in any department and I seek to be the best in everything, always, in spite of whether it's calling for events or canvassing. I just try and always be the best that I can be. Cool. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe my big head, my confidence. I would say my confidence is one of my biggest skills and qualities. Yeah.
What you call it?
I'm the best violinist of all time.
Okay, you got 1 minute
I'm
left.
pretty good at
to talk.
talking.
1 minute left,
Pretty
and
good
then
at
I'll announce the action, guys. 1 minute to talk.
I'm the best violinist of all time. I'm the fastest runner of all time.
That's incredible.
Like Usain Bolt's gonna on me. Yeah,
I beat Alex.
I'm the champion of everything. Everything I do is good.
That's great. That's great.
I'm just
All right.
kidding. Obviously.
No, remember you smile and you say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I just moved on.
No, I'm the greatest violinist. I got video to prove.
He actually
Yeah.
is.
Tiniest violin.
No, real full size. I got video to prove. I'll show you guys that.
Yeah.
I bet you do.
I will.
I really suck at this. I'm good at adapting to my environment, especially when going into things maybe with like a full scope of knowledge and learning from examples.
Okay, I'm gonna ask
You're a good
you.
listener.
I'm gonna ask
Really bad at
you.
roasting vibes.
Just take, I'm gonna give you a 1 minute. I'm gonna ask you just to write down 2 or 3 actions you think you can take to improve your attitude. So I'll give you a simple one. I'll give you a very easy one, which is obviously every morning spend 5 minutes writing down 3 things that you feel grateful for. That would be a simple one. Now they should be specific things, not like I'm grateful for my life and my family, but specific things. The more specific, the better. That would be an example of an action you can take. So 1 minute, Write down 2 or 3 actions you could take in the future to build your attitude of gratitude and your attitude of positivity and your attitude of resilience. Okay, what I'm gonna ask you to do is I want you to, whatever you've written that on, I just want you to mark around it, like divide it from the rest of your notes so it's easy that it stands out. Because I want you to be able to go back to it at the very end. So I want you to just draw a sort of a square around it or bold it if you're typing it in. Whatever you can do, just make it so that when you go back through your notes, it's obvious where the action guides are. Is that clear enough?
Yes.
All right. So who wants to give an example of one of the actions that they said? If you want to put up your hand, I'll bring the mic to you. Who wants to give me an example? Great.
I'll get you all started. So something that I've been talking about the past couple of weeks is improve, what I want to improve is good intentions, assuming good intentions.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Round of applause, please. Assuming positive intentions. What would happen is, what you would do is you would stop and you would, as soon as you notice yourself going off, or as soon as you notice yourself, reacting negatively to someone, you would stop and you would ask yourself, what if this person had good intentions? What if this person was actually trying to help? What if this person really did feel good about the situation and was really doing their best? And as a result of that, by taking that specific action, it makes everything easier. Let's just do 2 more. So who's next? Who else is going to help? Great. I'm glad that you made me walk. This is great. I'm gonna cover a lot of steps today. I can already feel it.
I want to take time every day to recognize and express gratitude for the little things that my fiance does to support me with this job and this journey that we're going together.
Fantastic. Big round of applause for that. Say this for that one. What I love about it is the specificity of it. So it's the specificity of my fiance on the little things. That's where gratitude works. If you say, I'm grateful for life, I'm grateful for this, you have to break it down. And that's a perfect example of that. So once again, what we would do in that situation is, if we were doing that, we would stop and we go, when am I going to do that? When am I going to take time out? Every morning at what time? And I know this might seem a little bit, too organized, but if you don't put it in, and we'll talk more about this later, if you don't put it in a schedule, it might not happen. So the only action that we would need to make sure is you give yourself that 2 or 3 minutes to feel gratitude for, or express gratitude for the things that, the little things that your fiance does in that situation. So great job. We'll do 1 more. Thank you. I love the way everyone's on the edge.
One thing I'd like to do is just contact a distant friend or an associate of some sort to let them know I'm thinking about them and see how they go.
Perfect. Round of applause. Let's put this in. There's one thing I'm asking all 3 of you and everyone else to do. There's just one missing piece here. And that is, you have the action. 3 great examples. The one question I want you to answer is when. When are you going to make contact? When are you going to express gratitude? When are you going to assume the best intentions? That's what we're looking to be able to do. Because if we don't have a when, it's not going to happen. this making sense?
Yeah.
So I want you to be answering that question. Let's talk about the mindsets of success. And so when we talk about the mindsets of success, we're talking again, remember, about the way we think about the world, right? It's the thoughts we have that we feel certain about, which determines how we interpret the world. And so the first of the three mindsets we're going to talk about is something many of you have heard of, the growth mindset. The growth mindset is very simple. It's based upon the premise or the idea that some people have a fixed mindset where they believe this is how I am, this is how I'll always be. I'm good at this, I'm bad at that, and I'll always be the same. Whereas people with a growth mindset are, look, I'm not doing too well at this at the moment, but I can improve, I can work on it, I can grow, I can develop. And so what the research by the professor Carol Dweck at Stanford University, who coined this term, fixed the growth mindset. What she found in her research was people with a growth mindset are more likely to have better relationships, do better in exams, earn more money, be happier, live longer. There's all sorts of positive benefits that will be accrued from having the growth mindset. And having a growth mindset in the work that you do is even more important, because the work that you do every single day, if you can see yourself as someone who grow and improve and develop, then your salary will grow and improve and develop as well. The better you get, the more conversions you're likely to make. The more conversions you're likely to make, the more money you make. And so in order for you, in the work that you do, to continuously get better and to continuously improve the quality of your life, seeing yourself as someone who can grow is crucial. So how do you do this? Once again, it comes down to questions. First question is, how can I grow or improve? What can I do in my life to improve in my personal development or professional development? Not everyone reads books, but a lot of you might listen to Audible, for example. So if you're listening to books, great. If you read books, great. If you listen to podcasts, great. The question is, what kind of books are you reading or listening to? What kind of podcasts are you listening to? And I'm not having a go. If you listen to murder podcasts, anyone listen to murder podcasts? Yeah, that's okay. That's entertainment. I get it. If you watch certain soap operas or reality shows, I get it. What I'm saying is, it's a little bit like a diet. Sometimes you want a pizza. And you know when you're eating the pizza, no one is under any illusion. You're not looking at that pizza, no matter how good your mindset is, you're not looking at that pizza going, well, I'm going to be so healthy after this. Oh yeah, this is perfect, this is great. And see the protein in the salami? Oh, I'm going to be on fire. We don't look at it that way because we know. The same is true when you're sitting down or listening to some of these things. It's not, again, bad for you per se. Some of it is, I would argue, but a lot of times it's not. But we also need our greens. We need our vegetables. We need our fruit. So how do we get them in the mental form? What we do is we look at the mental vitamins that we can have out there. And that is the learnings and the lessons, everything from motivation to learning to hopefully what we're doing today, right? This is about the things that if you learn it, if you practice it, if you go over it, you get to a stage where you start to develop yourself and you grow and you improve. And it starts with the question, how can I? Not can I, not am I always going to be, not, oh, I'm just one of those people. I'm just not good with people. I'm not built for sales. I'm not built for marketing. They're just beliefs. They're not true because you don't know. You do not know your potential. The only time you know your potential is when you die. And by then, it's too late. Because your potential is everything you could possibly do. Now, that doesn't mean some people are more naturally gifted than others, but we can all improve and grow and get better. And so the questions you ask, the first one is, how can I grow and improve? The second one is, how good have I been putting in effort? And what do we mean by that? Well, one of the things that Professor Dweck found is that people with a growth mindset, whenever they weren't getting the results, they put in more effort. They were saying, okay, what do we need to do to be able to get this? They were hungry, they were motivated, they were driven. And they didn't see it as an excuse to sit back and go, I guess I'm just not good enough. Instead, they say to themselves, I wasn't good enough there, so I'm going to be next time. They saw that effort. And by the way, also, those of you who has children, okay, so those of you with children, whenever you praise them, one of the things just to be cautious of or to be aware of is that if, for example, you say to your child, you're so good at this. The good part of that is you build their confidence. But the challenge with it is that if children grow up learning, I'm good at this and I'm bad at that, then they put the value on this essence of, oh, I'm one of those people, as opposed to, I'm working hard at this. So I'm not suggesting, stop telling, your kids that you're good at this, but I am saying praise the effort, not just the quality. So if you see your child and you see them and they're, doing great at math, for example, you say, I love how hard you work at math. Right? It's so inspiring, or whatever it is, but praise the effort, not just the outcome. Because when you do that, they start to find positive association with growth. And then when they're doing badly, they're less likely to think, I'm no good at this, I'm no good at that. They're more likely to think, oh, I just need to work on this. Make sense?
Yes.
I know we have, what areas do I need to prioritize working on? So you only you know that. All of you have different things that you know that you need to work on the most. Right? So you have to decide for yourself, what are your priorities? What are the things? And there's going to be really two metrics that determine what your priorities are. What is you in terms of what you're good at and what you need to work on and develop? Right? So what are the things that you know I need to do that better? Maybe in the 10 steps. Maybe you're really good at certain parts. You're really good at building rapport. You're really good at the entry. You're really good at, the inspection. But maybe you're not as good as you want to be at the demo. Or maybe you nailed the demo, but you're not great at the pre-close. Whatever aspect of it is, it's about identifying what are the areas that I need to prioritize. That's one metric, your skills, currently. The second metric is going to be what's most important given the work that you do. So that is, given the customers that you're dealing with, what is the most important thing you need to work on for them? So it's either personally what you need to work on, or contextually, based upon the situation you find yourself in, what do you need to work better at? But either way, it determines what you prioritize. So this is the growth mindset. And again, when you ask these questions, they will lead you to start to think in those ways. The second type of mindset is the control mindset. This is a really important one as well. And again, it's something I know I mentioned before, but I want to get a little bit more nuanced with it now. The research shows whenever we're stressed about something, the degree of stress we feel is directly connected to the lack of control we feel over that situation. The more control you feel over a very stressful situation, the less stressed you'll be. The less control you feel over a not too stressful situation, the more stressed you'll be. So stress is not always objective, like this event is very stressful. Well, it depends on how much control you have. So who decides on control? Well, actually, to a great extent, you do. By focusing your attention on what you can or can't control. Now, sometimes you can control it. Sometimes you can only influence it, i.e. you can increase the probability of something happening. You can't control whether or not you get a yes from the client, but you can influence it. You can give yourself every shot. You can optimize the chances that they will, in fact, say yes, but you can't control it fully. So it's really important to ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? What can I influence in this situation? And what's out of my control? And to go a bit deeper on it, when you ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? Because you can control your mindset. You can control your attitude, for example. So you ask yourself, how am I going to control that? And when am I going to control that? So for instance, if you're in a situation where you're having a difficult conversation with someone, you can control assuming positive intent from that person. So that's why, again, I asked you, how would you do that? You might ask yourself, what is the positive intent that is guiding them? Or what positive way of thinking are they looking at this situation from? Or how do they want to help me? That's the how. And then the when is whatever situation you find yourself in. So the how and the when of what I can control, the how and the when of what I can influence, that's the secret sauce. Because if you know, oh, I can control this, I can influence this, well, you still need to be able to do it. If we know that something's in our control, but we don't do anything about it. If I know, for example, that not, eating really unhealthy foods every single day of the week, if I know that's under my control and I still do it, well, I may as well not have done that control exercise. It's only when you actually take control that you actually get the benefit from it. So number one, what is in your control when you go into a meeting, for example, when you make a call, for example, or if you're in marketing, when you're at an event, for example, what is under your control? Next, what is under your influence? What can you not guarantee, but you know you can stack the deck in your favor, right? And again, how are you going to do it? And when are you going to do it? And then finally, what's outside of your control? And you put it out there. There's going to be things we'll talk about a little later, but look, every result you get is determined of a combination of skill and look, right? And look is outside of your control. But the problem is, if you overestimate how important look is, you're going to struggle. And if you look at most of the most successful people, and I'm not just talking success in terms of monetary terms, I'm talking about in terms of attitudinal terms, relationship terms, et cetera, they take responsibility for the situation they're in. And that's what we call accountability thinking. Being accountable is you look at the situation and you ask yourself at the end of the call, how could I have done better with that lead? Not that lead was terrible. That was the worst lead ever. I'm getting terrible leads at the moment. Now, by the way, maybe you do get a lead that's not good. But even if you do, what's more useful? Blaming the lead or figuring out what you need to do to get even better the next one? Do you think this is not, this is not a positive thinking, this is practical. This is just common sense. Is that not fair?
Yeah.
So whenever we do complain about leads, I'm not saying you're wrong, you could even be right. But I'm saying by you doing it, it just doesn't serve you. It doesn't help you. It doesn't empower you. It doesn't make you better. It doesn't make you grow. So it's really important for you to focus on what could I have done? How could I have improved? That's accountability thinking. You with me?
Yeah.
All right. Let me just ask you, just because I know, we've been, talking quite a lot in this, if you can just, you have great energy, you're all wonderful, but if you can give a little bit more energy, that would be wonderful. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I love it. See? Just, it's even more enthusiastic. I love it. The third one, this is a really important one, particularly talking about the adversity we talked about earlier. You're going to go through dark times. You're going to have stresses. You're going to have strains. You're going to have adversity. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. You're going to have bad months. Sometimes you're going to have a bad year. But the reality is, when we face these things, the mindset we have plays a huge part in determining how they affect us. Let me give you a little bit of one of the most fascinating studies out there on mindset. It was research done by a lady called Kelly McGonigal. She's wrote a book called The Upside of Stress. And in her research, what she did was she looked at the impact of stress over health and over, how long people live. And what she found is that people who struggle or suffer a lot from stress tend to have more health problems and tend to die younger on average, which is something we intuitively probably know, right? Here's the catch though. What she found is that that's only true when the people experiencing the stress believed that the stress was going to cause those things. In other words, when she found the people with the mindset of stress that said, stress can actually be something that helps me, it's something that I can grow from, this post-traumatic growth notion, stress is actually something that can help me be at my best. When she looked at those people, there was no difference between those people and everyone else that didn't experience high levels of stress. So what that in effect means is that our mindset about what stress will do to us plays a large part in determining whether or not stress is going to negatively impact us. Now, am I suggesting, so what I'm trying to tell you is go out there and be as stressed as you like, work like, you're going to die tomorrow and make sure that every day is more stressful than the next? Absolutely not. There is a biological impact of stress. We do need to manage it. We do need to mitigate it. We do need to look after it. However, your attitude or mindset about the adversity when you face it, about the stressful event you're dealing with, the way you think about that is going to determine how your body responds to it. So give yourself every single advantage you can and see stress as something as, I feel really stressed now, which means, and then extract a different meaning from it. So how do you do this? Well, ask yourself, first of all, what can I do to minimize stress? So take the actions, get the plan of what specifically you're going to do to minimize it. Number two, how is the stress good for me? That's the question. It's just like the attitude and resilience. How is this good for me? And just by thinking about it like that, it mitigates the impact of stress on your body, on your mind, on your relationships, on your health. What deliberate stress can I use to become stronger? Now, again, what do we mean by deliberate stress? What I mean by deliberate stress is there is a need for adversity in life. If you go through life and everything is too comfortable, you will never grow. It's not good for you. We all know that if children don't get a chance to go out there and play and experience upset, if, for example, you have children, and if that child is mollycoddled, we have a term in Ireland called mollycoddled. Do you have that here? No, it means like wrapped in, pillows everywhere and made sure that nothing ever bad happens and no one ever says a bad word. And you're tippy-toeing around and you're making sure, oh, we don't want to say this in case it hurts this person's feelings. That's terrible for children. It's terrible for you. You know why? Because if you take too much care and you're too soft and you're too big with your child, they're going to go out in the real world anyway. And therefore, when they do hit the real world, it's going to be a rude awakening. And so what we need to do, not just as a society, but we need to do individually, is that we need to allow ourselves to become aware of the fact that sometimes there's deliberate stress we can use to become stronger. Let me give an example. Anyone here exercise? You're putting your body through deliberate stress so that you're healthier or stronger, or so you got a six-pack. Does anyone here have a six-pack? Okay, right. Have a keg.
I did in my brain last night.
The fridge. So the point of it is that the deliberate stress is something you do, even by the way, even eating healthy. When you go out to a meal and you know you're working to try to lose some weight and you choose the salad over the steak, that's deliberate stress. Now, I'm not saying you should always do that, but I'm saying a lot of times the things that we do, a lot of people are into cold showers. Anyone do the cold shower stuff? Cold showers in the morning?
Yeah.
No? Okay, some people do it, right? Again, that's deliberate. It's called deliberate cold exposure. And the reason people do it is, number one, it's benefits for your immune system. Number two, it releases a number of chemicals, including adrenaline and dopamine, which make you feel more alert. But even going for a walk and putting yourself out there and doing things that are a little different and learning something new. And even every time you knock on a new door or you make a new call, it's deliberate stress that makes you grow. Is this all resonating? Yeah?
Yes.
So these are the kinds of attitudes or mindsets that we want to look at. So again, exercise. What are 5 things you can do to work on your mindset and attitude? When are you going to do them? And create an action plan. So for this one, I'm going to ask you simply to just take this time. I'm going to ask you just to take 4 or 5 minutes yourself. No need to talk to each other about this. Most of the rest of the exercise will be conversations with each other and whatnot. But for this, I'm going to ask you to take your notes out and I want you to list down what are 5 things you can do. When are you going to do them? And then translate them into the action guide. So you got 2 or 3 of the priorities or takeaways, right? So we talked about growth. We talked about control. We talked about stress. How are you going to do things? And again, I want you to turn it into real action. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I just want you to take notes on 5 things you can do. And then I'll check in with you. just to help with the action guide, as you do the exercise, I have it here, create an action guide to remind you this daily. So these 3 practices should be something that you do every single day. So like, let's say, for example, you have a sort of a ritual at nighttime where, in the evening, you set yourself up for the next day, you know what your calls are gonna be, all that stuff. Try to incorporate it into that. Or if you do that, if you do something in the morning to prepare yourself, incorporate something for just a couple of minutes in that to what we call prime yourself into the right attitude, right frame of mind, right mindsets. That's, so when I say actions, 2 or 3 actions, that's what I'm looking for. Something you can do every single day that gets you into the right frame of mind. You got about 1 minute left. Okay, all right. So now, just to let you know, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask for a couple of examples again. Then I'm going to, 2 or 3 more slides, I think, and then we're going to take the first morning break. Is that all right with everyone?
Yeah.
We all good?
Yes.
All right. So who's going to give us an example of one of the actions they're going to take on a daily basis? Super. And I don't even have to walk too far. I love it.
I know for sure I'm gonna start with the accountability thinking. Personally, myself, I know I can easily blame things instead of myself and how I can improve in certain situations.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. Round of applause. What's your name?
Brittany.
Brittany. So what I would ask Brittany to do, and again, ask all of you to do, is to go, okay, so what does that look like in reality? Let's translate it into an actual action. So it's accountability thinking, asking that question. What could I have done? How could I have improved it? How could I have made a difference? And again, when are you going to do that? My guess is it'll be right after something doesn't go your way. So as soon as something doesn't go your way, that's immediately. Every time you don't get a sale, that's immediately the first thing that Brittany will do in her head. And as a result of that, she's going to benefit. Who's next? Excellent.
I realized I've been told that not very emotional and I compartmentalize a lot. So I really want to focus on letting all, our reps and coworkers know how much they
the question I would ask. So when would that be?
Straight away, always.
Always. And so we have it daily, right, consistently, or weekly, right? Maybe daily might be too much, right? Because if you're constantly telling people, whatever, but weekly, out of the blue sometimes, randomly, not just after they've gotten a sale, maybe after they haven't gotten a sale. Let's imagine Brittany's there and for whatever reason, she doesn't get a sale and she was hoping to get it. And then she asks herself the question, what could I have done differently? And then she hears the feedback, you know, just want to say you do a really great job. I know that didn't go for you, but you're nailing it. I really have seen improvement. Now we're starting to build habits, practices, behaviors, because you can't measure attitude sometimes. That's what I'm trying to get across. A lot of people talk about the same stuff, but it's like this highfalutin, no, we need to be more positive. My question is, what does that mean? What do you do and when do you do it? If you translate everything to an action, it becomes real. Let's do one more person who's going to share. Super. I'm going to choose here purely so I don't have to walk. But I will get to you later.
So I downloaded an app a while ago called Headspace for meditation, and it's something that I've gotten away from. So, you know, my action today is after this, went out in my car and I will meditate in my car, and then every day after, just because it definitely helped my mindset before, and I can, you know, start doing it again.
Excellent. Great. I will say is make sure you meditate in your car before you drive, not while you're driving. So, all right. So, and can everyone see where I'm getting at? We're not just talking about ideas here. We're talking about actions, real things. Yeah. So, I want to talk just briefly before we get to the break about balance, emotional balance. What I call the art of emotional balance. Because a lot of times people are like, be happy, be positive, be great. There's upsides and downsides in life. You have an upside, ups will happen when they happen. When, you know, Jim Rohn, famous motivational speaker, he calls these the summers in life. When everything's going great, when everything's, you know, rocking and rolling, and you can't do any wrong, and you've hit, you know, your quota, or, you know, you've gotten 2 sales or 3 sales in a row. Things are looking up. It's great. Enjoy it, savor it, love it. Let it empower you and motivate you and inspire you. However, we have to be cautious, because if we get too up and we get too assumed, what do we get? Complacent. And complacent leads to what a term I learned last night, which was commission bread. Right? You're in a situation where after you've gotten a day and you're on fire and you can't do any wrong, and then you come in with too much energy for the person that you're talking to. And as a result of that, they're kind of overwhelmed. They're not there yet. You know, you haven't paced them. You haven't connected with them and then led them. Instead, you've come in going, listen, you want to listen to me? I am the person. Listen 5 minutes to me, you'll be buying every window in, you know, this county. Right? When you get too up, it's not you've got to bring yourself on a downer. I'm not suggesting, okay, so every time I feel really happy, think about something that makes me feel sad. No! But I am saying, pay attention to the way in which you're interacting. And always reset. I'm going to go through a self-reset process in a moment. But the second thing is downs will happen. You will have times where things don't go your way. And sometimes it'll be luck. And sometimes it'll be you didn't do as good a job as you wanted to. Sometimes traffic made you late and that already started it. Whatever it is, it's important that we take responsibility for what we can do. We look at the accountability that we can have over it. And again, something I learned last night that is a phrase that's used here, rags to riches in 2 pitches. I had to hear it a couple of times to make sure that I, you know, heard every word properly. Because initially when I heard it, I was like, what? And then I was, oh, yes, pitches, okay. Pitches. So if you think about it, rags to riches in 2 pitches. Within 2 pitches, you can turn your week around. You can even turn your month around. So in a position like you're in, doing the work that you do, in the situation you find yourself in, even when things aren't going well, the mindset reset needs to be, okay, next, this might be the opportunity for me to turn things around. And when things are going well, reset, okay, this is a new client and I need to make sure that, you know, my momentum carries, but in a way that works for that client. Is this all resonating? Is this all resonating?
Yes.
Excellent.
So did that.
All right, 2 elements that determine your success will be look and skill. That's pretty much it. Optimize your skill and execute the process. If you are consistent with the 10 steps, and you're consistent with your attitude, and you're consistent with your mindset, and you're consistent with all of the behaviors that you know lead you to success, then over the long term, you're going to get the results. You might have a bad day or a bad week here or there, but over the long term, over the year, it's all going to even out, and you're going to be at the standard. The standard that you are at is dependent upon the habits and the consistency that you execute. The standard that you're at is dependent upon the habits and the consistency of your execution. So you focus on the process itself. That's why the 10 steps are a great structure, because you know what to do. And if you're ever like, oh, I'm not sure, you go back and you look at the script. And that will help you to remind yourself, so that even though you're in the moment with the customer, you know what you're supposed to be doing at that moment in time. So the harder you work, the luckier you are. The amount of times I've heard that, and you know the kind of people who tell me that, usually billionaires, millionaires. I've worked with a couple of billionaires in the past, and they firmly believe that. Because it's very easy. And it tells a lot about a person when you say, oh, they're so lucky. As soon as we start looking at everyone else as so lucky, it tells you a lot about us. It means we're, taking ourselves out. We're blaming the world. We're saying some people are lucky and other people aren't, and I'm just one of those unlucky ones. We're playing what we call the victim story. And in life, you can play one of 3 stories. As a therapist, I saw this all the time. People play one of 3 stories. They're either a victim, they're a villain, or they're a hero. Victims say the reason for my problems is the world, everyone else. Villains say the reason for my problems is I'm an idiot. It's all me. And heroes say, doesn't matter what the reason for my problems are. It's up to me to take control, to figure out what I can do about them so I can overcome it and live happy ever after like every other hero. Making sense?
Yes.
And then finally, the self-reset process, they call it, very simple. These 4 steps are not the only things you could do, but they're a good sort of simple process to help you to reset yourself at any moment. In life, oftentimes, whenever we struggle with our emotions or struggle with what's going on, it's because we're reacting to whatever's happening outside of us. And so in order for us to take control back, we need to be more what we call proactive. So how are you proactive? Well, you're deciding, first of all, what are my goals? So what is it that I want to achieve? What is my goal? So let's say you come out of a meeting, it went badly, you had your high hopes, and maybe even you think about it and you go, I'm far away from what I was expecting to get. I'm not doing so well. This has not been a good month so far. You stop. And instead of dwelling on all of that, you stop and you ask yourself the question, what is my goal in this situation? So what's your goal when you're about to go into a home? Your goal is to get the sale, right? That's it. The past doesn't matter. The disappointments don't matter. The rejections don't matter. The heartbreaks don't matter. The stress you're dealing with outside of work doesn't matter. The stress you're dealing with inside of work doesn't matter. The argument you had with a colleague doesn't matter. The argument you had with the customer doesn't matter. Nothing matters except this next situation, this next goal. And just by doing that, you activate a frontal part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And what that does is that's the logical powerhouse that determines what decisions we make and allows us to be able to elevate our willpower to the point that we're much more successful in the interactions we have. So, what is your goal is the first question. Number 2, what have you to feel grateful for? Why do we bring that question back here? Because number 1, it makes us more positive. Number 2, it makes us more resilient. And number 3, as we're interacting, we're naturally starting from a place of confidence because we're reminding ourselves, you know what? I'm grateful for this quality of mine. I'm grateful for, this person in my life. I'm grateful for this job and the opportunities I have with it. Whatever it is, you remind yourself of something you're grateful for, and instantly it shifts your brain away from scarcity towards abundance. The third is, what reasons are there to feel good? And so some of it is what you feel grateful for, but you stop and you ask yourself, what reasons are there in my life, in my work to feel good? And it's a slight nuanced difference between grateful. Grateful is how lucky you are. Whereas feeling good could be just something good that happened. Something positive about the situation. I get to do this is gratitude. But the sun is shining is something good happening. I just listened to a great song is something good. You get me? I just meditated. I listened to Headspace or Calm and I feel really good. That's something good. We focus on that. Why? Because what we're trying to do is take control over our neurochemistry so that the kind of chemicals that allow us to be at our best, such as dopamine, adrenaline, oxytocin, serotonin, all of these chemicals, and we'll talk about a couple of them later, but all of these chemicals are going to be triggered by us choosing these thoughts. And then finally, what's the next step? What's the first specific thing I need to do? You give yourself an easy win to start with. The next step is I shake the person's hand, I make eye contact, or I fist bump, or whatever I do, I make eye contact, I smile, and I make them feel good. We'll talk more about that specifically later, but this reset. What do I want to achieve? What do I feel grateful for? What do I feel good about? And then finally, what's the first step? Clear enough?
Yeah.
All right, let's take we will say a 20-minute break.